And the Olympic Games in Tokyo are set to begin in just 10 days, with the city under a new state of emergency due to COVID-19. Now, despite the controversial decision, the chief of the Olympic Committee said today that Tokyo is the best prepared host city ever for the Games. James Longman is there.
It was hoped pushing Tokyo's Olympics back a year would give Japan enough time to get past the pandemic. But with the opening ceremony now less than 2 weeks away, that hasn't happened. Nothing about these games will be normal. The opening ceremony is usually packed with thousands of gold medal hopefuls proudly marching from every corner of the earth, likely paired way back, and 30 minutes longer to allow for social distancing. A massive testing and quarantining process is in place. Athletes must arrive at the Olympic Village in Japan's capital 5 days before their sports start, and they have to leave the country 48 hours after they've been eliminated or their event ends, whatever comes first. And masks are mandatory at all times except when competing.
They have to kind of pretend they're back in 2020, dealing with those very rigid rules that they live by in 2020, even though now, of course, it's the summer of 2021.
Going ahead with the Games has been controversial. Japan's COVID numbers are far lower than most other countries, but they're rising, and the Delta variant accounts for 34% of cases in the Tokyo region. That's expected to be 75% by the end of July. And crucially, only about 16% of people have received a vaccine. There's big local opposition to these events happening at all. Olympic organisers have implemented strict protocols to keep athletes safe and the Games running smoothly, like daily testing and tracking apps to monitor movement.
No high fives, no handshakes, no cheering, no yelling. It is going to be a very Spartan existence.
And it's not just the athletes locking down. Spectators will be banned from nearly every event, including parents of Olympians, meaning none of that Olympic drama, like these infamous scenes from US gymnast Ali Raisman.
Come on, handstand, let's go.
And even for journalists covering the Games, getting into the country is not easy.
The amount of paperwork you need to get into Japan is unbelievable. And now I'm waiting for the results of a coronavirus test, which I just took. That will appear here, and then I will be summoned to a window, and then I've got to go through immigration.
And James Longman joins me live now, quarantined in his Tokyo hotel room. James, I know you're a one-man band right now, so we appreciate it. Tell me a little bit, these Olympic Games, they're going to be different than any other. How are all these changes affecting the athletes?
Yeah, Diane, I mean, in just about every way possible. I was actually on the flight over here from London with a whole load of Team GB athletes representing Great Britain. And they had to go through all the same checks that I did at the airport. There were multiple checks. You have to have about sort of 15 pieces of paper. They would have had to have had multiple tests before even leaving their home countries. Once here in Japan, they're not allowed to leave their area. They're not allowed to mix properly with other athletes from other delegations in the Olympic Village. No athlete is allowed into Tokyo proper. So all the fun and excitement as a young athlete, you can imagine many young people compete in the athletics, something like 10,000 people from all around the world normally compete in an Olympics in usual circumstances. They won't be able to enjoy the Japan that they had, I suppose, hoped to enjoy. They'll have to have multiple tests whilst they're here. They won't be able to arrive even 5 days, any earlier than 5 days before their event, and then they'll have to leave within 48 hours after they've completed it. And we've heard actually it's been difficult for many of them even to get here. Many of the commercial airlines just aren't running at the moment. I heard about the Fijian team who had to essentially get on a cargo plane from the Pacific Islands because it was very difficult for them even logistically to get here to Japan. The Jamaican team, some of the Jamaican athletes have had to get 3 or 4 flights because it's so hard to get here. So look, for the athletes it's a real shame, I think, but they'll be focused on the sport, so I guess that's the plus side.
And James, how do the Japanese people feel? They're largely funding this, and yet they can't even go to the Games and see them.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's really, for me, what underlines this whole experience. You know, the International Olympic Committee, I think it's fair to say, pressured Japan into putting these games on against pretty hostile public opinion here. People just did not want these games to go ahead, given the pandemic and given especially that the vaccination rate has been so low. And I think there's anger here in Japan with the government for being complacent and for not pushing hard enough against quite a lot of vaccine hesitancy. But fundamentally, it's the Japanese people who pay for for these things to happen. Tokyo did actually host the Olympics before in 1964, so a lot of the infrastructure was already here, but they still spent something like $17 billion refurbishing, upgrading it. The main stadium, over $1 billion. That is Japanese taxpayer money. And still, they will be here at home watching on television whilst they watch dignitaries from all over the world, probably, and officials from their own countries, politicians from their own country here in Japan, able to go along to the games and sit in the in the stadiums watching the games. So I think for the Japanese people, this is ultimately a real shame.
And James, one of the people that's scheduled to go now, we're hearing, is our own First Lady, Jill Biden. So how is that aspect of things going to be handled in the midst of all these restrictions? We know you're there in quarantine in your hotel room. So what do we know about these dignitary visits?
Well, very little, to be honest. I mean, Jill Biden will have to come in and out pretty quickly. I don't imagine she's going to be spending 3 days cooped up in her hotel room. Other dignitaries from around the world will come in for the opening ceremony. We know it's only going to be far, far pared back from what it would have otherwise been. There's probably not even going to be much of a closing ceremony, come to think of it, given all the athletes will have gone home. This is something the US normally does. Jill Biden has actually been before to an Olympic Games in her capacity as second lady. Michelle Obama came on behalf of the Obama administration. Ivanka Trump came for her father to the Winter Games. So this is something that US delegations and delegations from around the world are used to, but they won't be used to this. And if I may, Diane, I'm just going to show you where I am. This hopefully is not how Jill Biden is going to be spending her time when she gets here. But if I turn it round, this is my little setup here. We have my little lights. I think you know in broadcasting, lights make us look good. Over there, I've got my little area where I do my workouts. 3 days, not allowed to talk or see anybody else, so I have to work out how to do this on my own. And I've got all my tests. So when I do a test, I have to spit in one of these little bottles, and then someone comes and gets it. It's very glamorous. That's all from me from here, Diane.
The glamorous life on TV. James, you're doing a great job for us, my friend. We appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.